I was already 20 minutes late when I realised they'd forgotten me. The gas station bathroom mirror showed a girl I barely recognised anymore. Pale skin, stretched too thin over sharp cheekbones, dark circles carved deep beneath eyes that had stopped expecting anything. I'd been sick again. The nausea came in waves now, unpredictable and humiliating. I pressed cold water against my wrists, waiting for my hands to stop shaking. When I finally pushed through the door, the parking lot stretched empty where our silver SUV had been. For a moment, I just stood there, squinting against the afternoon sun, convinced I'd mixed up the spot. But no. The oil stain was still there, dark against the concrete. The same spot where Dad had parked, where I'd stumbled out saying I'd be quick, just 2 minutes. I checked my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I called Mum first. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Dad's phone went straight to voicemail. He always forgot to charge it. When I tried Emma's number, she picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, what's up?" My sister's voice sounded light, unconcerned. "Where are you guys?" I kept my voice steady. "On the highway. Why?" Something cold settled in my chest. "You're on the highway?" "Yeah, we're like 20 minutes from Aunt Carol's. Traffic's not bad." She paused. "Wait, Jenny, where are you?" I closed my eyes. "Still at the gas station." Silence. Then, muffled voices. Emma's hand covering the phone, urgent whispers. Dad's voice rose in the background, then Mum's, higher and defensive. Emma came back on. "Oh my God, Jenny, I'm so sorry. We thought you were sleeping in the back. Your jacket was on the seat, and how long until you can come back?" More muffled conversation. Then Mum's voice taking the phone from Emma. "Sweetheart, we're already so close to your aunt's house. We're expected for dinner, and you know how she gets when we're late. Can't you just take an Uber or something? We'll pay you back." My throat tightened. "An Uber? Mum, that's like a $60 ride." "Well, we can't just turn around now. Traffic's terrible. We'd have to..." "Emma, tell your father to stay in this lane. Sorry, honey. It's just really complicated right now. You're 18. You can figure this out." The line went dead. I stood there in the parking lot, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. A truck pulled in, its diesel engine rattling loud enough to shake my ribs. The driver glanced at me and looked away like I was something uncomfortable to witness. They'd left me, not forgotten me in a moment of distraction and rushed back, apologetic and worried. They'd known I was missing for 20 minutes and chosen not to turn around. Because it was inconvenient. Because Emma's jacket had been enough of a stand-in for an entire daughter. Because I'd become so invisible, even my absence looked like presence. I walked to the edge of the parking lot and sat on the curb. The asphalt radiated heat through my jeans. Cars came and went, people living their urgent little lives, and none of them saw me. I'd become so practiced at disappearing that even strangers looked right through me. I thought about all the times I'd made myself smaller. Every family photo where I'd stepped to the edge of the frame. Every dinner conversation where I'd swallowed my words before they could interrupt someone more important. Every achievement I downplayed because Emma's were always somehow brighter, more worthy of celebration. I'd spent 18 years teaching them that I didn't need attention, didn't need consideration, didn't need them to turn the car around. And they'd learnt the lesson perfectly. I ordered the Uber with money I'd been saving for textbooks, $63 to drive me to a house where I'd arrive alone, late, and still somehow be the one who'd inconvenienced everyone. The driver didn't make conversation, and I was grateful. I pressed my forehead against the window and watched the landscape blur past, strip malls and subdivisions, everything moving and nothing changing. The driver was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that occasionally found mine in the rearview mirror. She didn't ask why a girl my age was alone at a gas station, taking an hour-long ride to somewhere she clearly didn't want to go. Maybe she'd learned, like I had, that some silences were too heavy to break. When I finally walked through Aunt Carol's door, they were already at the table. Mum looked up, with bright, performative relief. "Oh, good. You made it. We saved you a plate." Dad didn't look up from his phone. Emma gave me an apologetic smile and shifted her chair slightly, making room that shouldn't have needed making. I sat down in the space they'd created for me, the same space I'd always occupied, just significant enough to notice when empty, never quite important enough to go back for. "You look tired," Aunt Carol said, her eyes scanning my face, with the kind of concern that never translated into action. "Are you feeling all right?" "Just car-sick," I lied. The conversation moved on without me. It always did. Emma had news about her college acceptance, early decision to a school that made Mum's eyes shine with pride. Dad told a story about work, something about a promotion he was certain would come through. They laughed and passed dishes, and their voices created a warmth I sat outside of, watching through glass. I pushed food around my plate and felt the nausea building again. The dizziness had gotten worse over the past few weeks. I'd scheduled a doctor's appointment, but it was still 2 weeks out, the earliest they could fit me in. Meanwhile, I kept getting sicker, kept getting quieter, kept disappearing in increments so small no one noticed until I was gone. Aunt Carol's pot roast tasted like dust in my mouth. I took small bites, mechanically chewing, swallowing past the tightness in my throat. Across the table, Emma laughed at something Dad said, her whole face lighting up the way it always did. Effortless, radiant, seen. I used to wonder what it felt like to take up that much space in a room, to speak and have people lean in instead of talk over you, to exist with such certainty that your presence mattered. I'd stopped wondering. Wondering hurt too much. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom. The hallway tilted as I walked, walls breathing in and out like lungs. I gripped the doorframe and waited for the world to stabilise. It didn't. The nausea had transformed into something sharper, something that clawed. I gripped the sink edge and tried to breathe through it, tried to find steady ground in a world that kept tilting. My reflection swam in the mirror, pale, fading, already half gone. When I looked in the mirror, my face had gone grey. I made it back to the guest room before my legs gave out. The dizziness came in a rush, and then the pain, sudden and absolute, like my body was collapsing inward. I tried to call out, but my voice came out as nothing, just air pushed through a closing throat. I heard them downstairs, still laughing. Someone had put music on. Emma's voice rose above the others, bright and alive and so far away. I reached for my phone, managed to knock it off the nightstand. It clattered to the floor, screen cracking, out of reach. The room dimmed at the edges, darkness creeping in like water. I thought about calling out again, but what was the point? They'd left me at a gas station. They wouldn't hear me now, 3 rooms away, through laughter and music and the story of their lives that had never really included me. The darkness came gently, almost kind. I remember thinking how quiet it was, how peaceful, how strange that dying felt like finally being allowed to rest. The last thing I heard was Emma's laugh, floating up through the floorboards like a bird I could never catch. The morning light hit wrong, too bright, too sharp. I opened my eyes to a ceiling I recognised but couldn't place. Not Aunt Carol's guest room, not the hospital. Somewhere older, somewhere I'd left behind. My childhood bedroom, the purple walls I'd begged for when I was 12. The glow in the dark, stars still stuck to the ceiling in constellations I'd invented. The desk cluttered with textbooks and half-finished homework. Everything exactly as it had been, as it shouldn't be. I sat up slowly, testing the movement. No pain, no dizziness, no grinding ache in my chest where my ribs had felt like they were caving in. I looked down at my hands. Smaller, younger. The scar from the kitchen knife accident 2 years ago was gone. My arms had weight they'd lost. I crossed to the mirror. 16. I was 16 years old. The memories crashed over me all at once. The gas station, the Uber ride, Aunt Carol's house, the pain, the ending, Emma's laugh echoing through my death like a eulogy she didn't know she was giving. And now, this impossible morning, 2 years before everything fell apart. I should have been panicked, should have been confused. Instead, I felt something click into place, like a door I'd been pushing against suddenly opening. I knew exactly where I was, when I was, and more importantly, I knew what came next, if I let it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from Emma. Family road trip today. Aunt Carol's expecting us by dinner. Dad says leave by noon. 2 years before, the same trip, the same ending point, but I was standing at the beginning with all the maps redrawn in my mind. I read the message again, feeling the old familiar pull, the instinct to accommodate, to agree, to fold myself into whatever shape they needed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, muscle memory preparing to type OK or sounds good or any of the small surrenders I'd made 1,000 times before. Then I deleted it. I got dressed slowly, deliberately, jeans that fit. A sweater I'd forgotten I owned, deep green, the colour Emma always said looked good on me, so I'd stopped wearing it because I didn't want to compete. I put it on now and looked at myself in the mirror. Alive. Whole. Given a second chance I hadn't asked for but would not waste. I went downstairs where Mum was packing snacks in the kitchen, creating the elaborate spread she always made for long car trips. Granola bars, cut fruit in containers, sandwiches wrapped in foil. She worked with efficient precision, each item placed in the cooler with care. "Oh, good, you're up," she said without looking at me. "Can you grab the cooler from the garage? Your father's loading the car." "I'm not going," she turned. "What?" "To Aunt Carol's. I'm not going." Mum's expression shifted through surprise, confusion, and landed on irritation. "Jenny, we've had this planned for weeks." "You've had it planned. No one asked if I wanted to go." "Well, you can't just stay here alone." "Why not? I'm 16. I can handle a weekend by myself." Mum set down the sandwich she was wrapping. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for the argument that would make me comply. We'd danced this dance 100 times, her pushing, me folding, the natural order restored. But I died in that order. I'd bled out in a guest room while they laughed downstairs, oblivious. I owed it nothing. Dad appeared in the doorway, keys already in hand. "What's the hold-up?" "Jenny says she's not coming," Mum said, voice tight with the special frustration reserved for children who stop following the script. Dad looked at me like I'd started speaking another language. "Is this about something? Are you upset?" I could have explained. Could have told them about how it felt to always be an afterthought, to be left behind physically and emotionally, to slowly disappear while they looked right through me. Could have described the cold parking lot asphalt, the Uber driver's pitying eyes, the taste of pot roast turning to ash in my mouth as I died from the inside out. But I'd learned something in that moment at the gas station, in those final minutes at Aunt Carol's house. They didn't forget me because they didn't care. They forgot me because I taught them I didn't matter. "No," I said simply. "I just don't want to go." Emma came bounding down the stairs, overnight bag slung over her shoulder, excitement radiating off her like heat. She stopped when she saw us all frozen in the kitchen, the air thick with a conflict she hadn't anticipated. "What's wrong?" "Your sister's decided she's too good for family time," Mum said. And there it was, the edge that turned my autonomy into selfishness, my boundary into betrayal. "I didn't say that. I said I'm not going." Emma looked between us, sensing conflict she'd have to navigate. This was her role, the mediator, the bridge, the one who kept everyone happy by absorbing the tension. I'd watched her do it for years, and I'd benefited from it, letting her smooth over my discomfort, speak for me when I couldn't speak for myself. "Come on, Jen, it'll be fun. Aunt Carol always makes that chocolate cake you like." The old me would have caved, would have seen Emma's diplomatic smile, and Mum's tightening jaw and Dad's impatient keys, and would have made myself small enough to fit back into the shape they expected. Would have gone to the car and climbed in, and disappeared into the back seat, and eventually, inevitably, been left behind at a gas station because I'd become so practiced at vanishing. Instead, I smiled. "Have fun. Tell Aunt Carol I said hi. I walked back upstairs before any of them could respond. I heard the urgent whispered conference in the kitchen, Dad's voice rising in frustration, Mom's in wounded martyrdom. Emma tried one more time, her footsteps soft on the stairs, her knock gentle on my door. Jenny, can we talk? There's nothing to talk about. I'm staying home. Did something happen? Did Mum or Dad? Nothing happened. I just don't want to go. Silence on the other side of the door. Then, quietly, okay, I'll miss you. Something in my chest tightened. Emma meant it. She always meant it. But meaning something and prioritizing it were different things, and I'd learnt the difference the hard way. I'll miss you too, I said, and I did. I heard her walk away, heard the final preparations, bags shuffling, doors closing, Mum calling out last-minute instructions that no one fully heard, then the front door slamming, the garage opening, the car pulling away. Silence. I sat on my bed in the empty house and felt no guilt, no anxiety, just a strange, weightless relief. For the first time in years, I'd chosen myself. For the first time ever, I'd let them leave without me instead of being left behind. The difference mattered more than they'd ever know. The weekend passed in quiet restoration. I cleaned my room, actually cleaned it, threw out the clothes that didn't fit, the books I'd kept because I thought I should like them, the remnants of a version of myself I'd been performing for so long, I'd forgotten it wasn't real. I found journals from middle school, read entries from a girl who'd still believed she could be seen if she just tried hard enough, was good enough, achieved enough. I'd spent years chasing a moving target, and the target had been their attention. I cooked food I wanted to eat, pasta with too much garlic, grilled cheese with the expensive bread Mum said was wasteful. Ice cream straight from the container while watching movies I'd saved on my laptop, films Emma had dismissed as boring, so I'd never suggested them for family movie night. I existed in my own space on my own terms, and it felt like breathing after being underwater. Saturday afternoon, I walked to the library. The children's section, where I'd spent countless hours as a kid, looked smaller now, the shelves I'd once needed a step stool to reach now at eye level. I found the corner where I'd hidden during particularly bad weeks, reading books about girls who ran away and had adventures, who mattered in their stories because they were the stories. I'd wanted that, had ached for it. But I'd never run. I'd stayed and shrunk and disappeared until running seemed impossible, until I couldn't remember what it felt like to take up space. A librarian I didn't recognise smiled at me. Can I help you find something? No, I said. I'm just remembering. She nodded like she understood and left me alone with my ghosts. Sunday morning, I made pancakes. Blueberry. The kind Dad always vetoed because he didn't like fruit in his breakfast. I made a stack and ate them slowly, savouring each bite. The small rebellion of choosing what I wanted. They came back Sunday evening. I heard the garage door, the shuffle of bags, the immediate resumption of noise and movement that always followed them like weather. Mum poked her head into my room. You survived, she said lightly, trying to reset to normal. I did. Aunt Carol was disappointed you weren't there. I'm sure she was fine. Mum hesitated in the doorway, searching for the hook that would pull me back into guilt. We talked about you, you know. Wondered what you were doing. I'm sure you did. Jenny, she stopped, recalibrating. Did we do something wrong? The question hung between us, genuine and afraid. I could have unleashed it all then, every forgotten birthday, every broken promise, every time my voice had been drowned out by someone louder, someone more important, someone who wasn't me. But anger required energy I didn't want to spend anymore. No, I said. You didn't do anything wrong, I just needed space. She nodded slowly, not quite believing me, but accepting that pushing would get her nowhere. When she didn't find the contrite daughter she'd expected, she left. That night at dinner, they talked about the trip. Emma described the drive, the meals, Aunt Carol's new patio furniture. They waited for me to ask questions, to express regret at missing out. I didn't. I ate my food and listened and offered nothing. The silence I left grew larger as they talked around it. Dad kept glancing at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Mum served seconds with too much brightness, overcompensating for something she couldn't name. Emma tried twice to pull me into the conversation, asking my opinion on things that didn't matter, trying to rebuild the bridge I'd burned. Dad finally broke. "You really didn't want to come?" "No," I said. "I really didn't." "We're family, Jenny. Family does things together." I met his eyes. Then, maybe family should make sure everyone actually wants to be there. The table went quiet. Emma stared at her plate. Mum's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Dad looked like I'd slapped him. I wasn't angry, wasn't trying to hurt them. I was just done pretending that accommodating their thoughtlessness was the same as being loved. "I'm not trying to be difficult," I said into the silence. "But you left me at a gas station once, or you will, and I'd rather stay home than wait to be forgotten." "What are you talking about?" Mum's voice went sharp with confusion. "We've never—" "Not yet," I said. "But you would have, if I'd gone." They looked at each other, then at me, trying to decode what I was saying. I couldn't explain about dying and coming back, about living through their negligence and being given a second chance to choose differently. So I didn't try. "I'm just saying," I continued, "that I need to know I matter, and the only way to know that is to see what happens when I'm not there." Emma's eyes went bright with tears. "Of course you matter." "Then prove it," I said quietly, "by noticing when I'm gone." After that, things shifted in small ways. They started asking instead of assuming. Started noticing when I was in the room. It wasn't perfect. Patterns built over years don't dissolve in days. But I'd established something they couldn't ignore. I was a person who could choose to leave. And that possibility changed everything. Mum started checking in more, not smothering, just present. A text here and there asking how my day was, actually waiting for the answer. Dad put his phone down during dinner, engaged in conversations, instead of hovering at the edge of them. Emma stopped assuming I'd go along with her plans, and started inviting me instead, accepting my no with grace when I gave it. The months unfolded differently than before. I knew what was coming. The illness that would go undiagnosed too long. The appointments I'd cancel because I didn't want to bother anyone. The slow deterioration I'd hide behind smiles and reassurances. This time, when the nausea started, I didn't downplay it. I told Mum I needed to see a doctor. And when she suggested waiting until next month, I made the appointment myself. She drove me there, though. Sat in the waiting room, came back when the doctor called me in. The diagnosis came early, a treatable condition caught before it became critical. Simple medication, simple monitoring. The doctor seemed surprised I'd come in so soon. "Most young women ignore symptoms like this," she said. "You probably saved yourself years of complications." I'd saved myself a life. The one where I died quietly in a guest room while my family laughed downstairs, where my ending was as overlooked as my living. Mum cried on the drive home. Not dramatic tears, just quiet ones that she wiped away quickly, embarrassed. "I should have noticed you weren't feeling well." "You couldn't have known." "I should have paid more attention." I didn't argue with her. She was right. The medication worked quickly. Within weeks, the nausea faded, the dizziness stopped, my body returned to itself. I felt solid again, anchored, alive in a way I'd almost forgotten. And with that solidity came clarity. I started speaking up more. In class, offering opinions I would have swallowed. At home, disagreeing when I disagreed instead of nodding along. With Emma, setting boundaries instead of following her lead out of habit. Each small assertion felt like reclaiming territory I'd ceded long ago. Senior year came. College applications. Emma had her heart set on the school she'd gotten into in my previous life, the one that had made Mum so proud. I chose differently. A school 6 hours away, a program in environmental science that had nothing to do with anyone's expectations and everything to do with what I actually wanted. I'd always loved the woods, the quiet spaces where you could exist without performance. Had dreamed of working in conservation, protecting the places that had protected me when nothing else did. But I'd never mentioned it because it seemed impractical, too different from Emma's business degree, too far from the life they'd envisioned for me. This time, I applied anyway. When the acceptance letter came, I showed them at dinner. My hand shook slightly as I passed the envelope to Mum. This mattered. Their reaction mattered, and I hated that it still did. But healing wasn't linear, and neither was learning to stop caring. Mum read it twice. This is so far away. It's a good program. But Emma's going to state. You could go there too. You'd be together. Emma shifted uncomfortably. Mum, let her choose where she wants to go. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Saw the guilt she'd carried since I'd refused the trip. The knowledge that something had shifted between us that she couldn't quite name. We'd never talked about it, but it lived between us, a gap neither of us knew how to cross. I want this school, I said. I need it. Dad put down his phone, actually put it down, and gave me his full attention. Something had changed in him too over the past year. He'd started seeing me, not as an extension of the family unit, but as a separate person with separate needs. It had made him quieter, more careful, less certain. Then, that's where you should go, he said. Mum started to protest, but Dad touched her hand. Something passed between them, some recognition I wasn't privy to. Mum looked at me again, and this time I saw it. Worry. Not the performative kind, but real concern that she'd lost something she couldn't name. Okay, she said quietly. If that's what you want. It was the first time I could remember her choosing my happiness over her comfort. Graduation came and went. I walked across the stage, accepted my diploma, smiled for photos. Emma graduated 2 years prior in my old life, so this was my first time being the centre of this particular attention. Mum cried. Dad took approximately 600 pictures. Emma cheered loud enough that people turned around. For that one day, I was seen, celebrated, the protagonist of my own moment instead of the supporting character in someone else's. It felt strange and good and bittersweet because I kept thinking about the version of me who'd died before experiencing this, who'd faded so completely that even her graduation would have been quiet, understated, easily forgotten in the shadow of Emma's achievements. Summer stretched long and golden. I worked at a local coffee shop, saved money, prepared for the separation I'd chosen. Emma and I spent more time together that summer than we had in years, not because we'd suddenly become close, but because we both knew time was finite now. She was going to state in the fall. I was going 6 hours in the opposite direction. The childhood we'd shared was ending, and we were both trying to figure out what came next. One afternoon, in late July, we drove to the lake where we'd spent summers as kids. The water was cold and clear, and we sat on the dock with our feet dangling, watching the sun burn across the surface. Do you remember when we used to come here every weekend? Emma asked. I remember you pushing me off this dock. She laughed. You were being dramatic about the temperature. I was 8, and the water was freezing. You needed toughening up. We sat in comfortable silence. A pair of ducks paddled by, unconcerned with our presence. I'm going to miss you, Emma said. I'll miss you too. Will you visit? During breaks? Sometimes. She turned to look at me. Just sometimes? I thought about how to explain it without hurting her. I need to figure out who I am away from here. Away from being your little sister or their daughter or the quiet one who doesn't make waves. I need space to be just me. And you can't do that here? No, I said honestly. I can't. She nodded slowly. Because of us. Not because of anything you did wrong, just because this place has too much history, too many versions of me that I don't want to be anymore. The day before I left for college, Emma asked if we could talk. We sat on the back porch, the place where we'd spent countless hours as kids, before the distance crept in. I'm sorry, she said. About the gas station. About all of it. I froze. What gas station? The one from the trip to Aunt Carol's? When Mom said you didn't want to come. I kept thinking about how we would have left you there. If you'd gone. If you'd gotten sick in the bathroom and we'd just driven away. So she'd understood. Had carried that phantom guilt for something that never happened in this timeline, but had killed me in another. You didn't leave me, I said. But we would have. That's what you meant, wasn't it? When you said we'd left you at a gas station, you knew somehow that we would have. Emma, I'm not asking you to explain how you knew. I'm just saying I'm sorry. For all the times we didn't see you, didn't choose you, made you invisible. My throat tightened. There's nothing to forgive. You didn't know what it meant. None of you did. And now? Now you do. She nodded. We sat in silence, watching the sun settle into the trees. It wasn't the closeness we'd had as children. That was gone, dissolved by years of small abandonments and quieter dismissals. But it was honest. It was real. And sometimes that was better than pretending nothing had broken. Will you call? She asked. When you get there? I'll call. Promise? Promise. I left the next morning with one suitcase and a future I'd chosen. Dad drove me to school, just the two of us. Mum had wanted to come, but I'd asked her not to. I needed this transition to be mine, not a family event that would turn my leaving into a production. Dad asked about my classes, my roommate, my plans. He listened when I answered. At some point during the drive, I realised he was actually trying, to know me. We stopped for lunch at a diner halfway there. Dad ordered coffee and a burger, and I got waffles because I could, because no one was there to judge my breakfast for lunch choices. Your mother's worried, he said. I know. She thinks you're running away. I'm not running, I'm walking towards something. He smiled slightly. That's a good line. It's true. I know. He took a sip of coffee. I'm proud of you, you know. For what? For knowing what you want, for not letting us tell you who to be, for... He paused, searching for words. For saving yourself. I looked up sharply. What? I don't know how to explain it, but something shifted in you last year. After you didn't come on that trip, you became more yourself, more solid, like you'd made a decision we couldn't see. I died and come back. I'd chosen myself over their comfort. I'd learned to leave before being left, but I couldn't tell him any of that. I just got tired of disappearing, I said. Yeah, he said quietly. I think we all noticed that. Eventually. When we pulled up to my dorm, he helped carry my things to the third floor. At the door, he hugged me, and I felt him hold on a moment longer than necessary. Call your mother tonight, he said. She needs to hear you're okay. I will. And Jenny? Yeah? Don't come home if you don't want to. Come home when you're ready. There's a difference. He left before I could respond, and I stood in the hallway watching him go. This man who'd learned to see me just in time. After he left, I stood in my empty dorm room. My space, my choice, my life spreading out in front of me like an unmarked road. No one had forgotten me here. No one had left me behind. I'd walked away on my own terms, and the leaving felt like power instead of abandonment. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. "Miss you already. Let us know you're settling in okay." I smiled and typed back, "I will. Love you." And I meant it, both parts. Thanksgiving break, I took the bus home. They'd offered to pick me up, but I'd declined. I'd learned to love my independence, the ability to come and go without negotiating or accommodating. When I walked through the front door, they were waiting. Actually, waiting. Not distracted or busy or assuming I'd fit myself around their schedule. Mum had made my favourite dinner. Dad asked about my classes with genuine interest. Emma wanted to hear about campus life, about my roommate, about everything I'd been doing in the months away. We sat around the table, and for the first time in years, I felt present. Not performing, not disappearing, not fading into background noise. Just there, seen and heard and chosen. The meal was warm and easy, conversation flowing without the old tensions. I told them about my biology professor who'd invited me to help with research in the spring. Emma shared stories about state, about her roommate drama, and the economics class that was kicking her ass. Dad talked about finally getting that promotion. Mum showed me photos of the garden she'd started, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. At some point during dessert, I realised we'd been at the table for 2 hours. No one had checked their phone. No one had excused themselves early. We were just there. Together. Actually, together. After dinner, I went for a walk. The neighbourhood looked the same, but felt different, like I was viewing it through new eyes. The houses I'd passed 1,000 times. The street corners where I'd waited for the school bus. The park where Emma and I had played as kids. All of it familiar and foreign at once. I passed the gas station. The one where they'd left me, where my first life had begun its slow ending. The parking lot was empty except for a single car at the pump, a girl about my age filling the tank, while her family waited inside. I wondered if she felt invisible too. If she'd spent her life making herself small enough to carry, quiet enough to forget. If she knew yet that she could choose to leave before they left her. I walked on. When I got back to the house, the lights were warm in the windows. I could see them through the glass. Mum and Dad on the couch, Emma at the kitchen table with her laptop. My family, imperfect and thoughtless and learning, slowly, to see me. I stood on the lawn for a moment, feeling the weight of both lives. The one where I died alone and the one where I'd learned to live deliberately. The pain and the power. The ending and the beginning. Then I went inside. Not because I had to, not because I was afraid of being left behind, but because I'd chosen to. Because I'd learnt the difference between being forgotten and being free, and I'd picked freedom every single time. They looked up when I entered, made space without my asking, smiled like my presence was a gift instead of an assumption, and I sat down among them, not invisible, not desperate, not dying by increments, just Jenny, finally, completely, wholly myself. The girl who'd been left behind and learned to walk away. The girl who'd died in silence and been reborn in choice. The girl who'd saved her own life by refusing to live it for anyone else. I never asked for a ride again. I never needed to, because I'd learned that the only journey worth taking was the one I chose for myself. And that was a road I'd walk alone, gladly, for the rest of my life.